There are books so powerful, so revealing, that entire empires moved to erase them from existence, not because they were false, but because they were dangerously true. Hidden between layers of ink and parchment, they spoke of things that threatened the structure of control, of energy, of consciousness, of the soul itself. These weren't fairy tales or heretical fantasies. They were coded messages, maps of forgotten dimensions, sacred blueprints of what we truly are and what we could become. Throughout history, kings, priests, inquisitors, and secret societies didn't just burn pages. They buried possibilities. And perhaps the most unsettling part is this. Some of these texts still exist, scattered, locked away, whispered about only in circles where the veil is thinner and silence holds more weight than words. Some of these books have been destroyed, others hidden in plain sight, disguised as myth, fiction, or madness. But the knowledge they hold still breathes beneath the surface, still calls out to those who can feel its presence. What you're about to hear is not a list. It's a path, a descent into the pages that survived and in the truths they refused to silence. Let us begin, not as readers, but as seekers of what was never meant to be forgotten. Not all censorship wears the face of fear. Sometimes it wears the robe of piety, the crown of order, or the mask of reason. In ancient Alexandria, the great library stood as a beacon of human curiosity. But not all scrolls that entered its chambers ever left. Whispers tell of hidden vaults, rooms sealed not by fire but by decision. Entire manuscripts vanished from the official catalogs, not because they were untrue, but because they were too true. They dared to suggest that man was not created to obey, but to awaken. Centuries later, the rise of religious empires brought with them a new kind of silence. The Index Librorum Prohibitorum, or Index of Forbidden Books, was not just a list, it was a wall, a calculated effort to restrict the flow of information that could challenge divine hierarchy, threaten the foundations of doctrine, or empower the individual to seek communion beyond the institution. In the East, similar patterns emerged. Certain Taoist texts were buried or guarded by lineages who believed the common mind wasn't ready for the alchemical truths they contained. Scrolls, written in coded metaphors where breath was spirit and water was consciousness. Those who dared decode them were often labeled as madmen or gods. And still, beneath the currents of every civilization there remained a thread, the belief that certain truths about life, energy, death, transformation should be earned, not given. Esoteric schools, mystery temples, and hermetic brotherhoods preserved these writings in fragments, in symbols, in ritual, not because they wanted to hoard them, but because they feared what might happen if they were misunderstood. The paradox is this: the more a truth is hidden, the more it begins to glow from within. And these ancient texts, they glow not with fantasy, but with a kind of forgotten remembrance, a call to those who still listen with the soul. Not all forbidden books were burned in public squares. Some were wrapped in silk and hidden in the tombs of sages. Others were passed hand to hand under moonlight, their pages copied in candle-lit silence by those who dared defy the fear of knowing. One of the most elusive texts is the Book of Enoch, an ancient manuscript that tells of celestial beings descending to earth, teaching forbidden arts to mankind. Astronomy, weaponry, enchantment, not just knowledge, but empowerment. It was rejected by many institutions not because it lacked depth, but because it claimed humanity was once visited by those who altered its destiny. To this day, many religious canons exclude it, and yet, it continues to whisper to those willing to look beyond the official lines. Then there is the Emerald Tablet, attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, a single slab of cryptic verses that, if understood, could unlock the laws of transformation, not only of matter, but of soul. As above, so below. The phrase echoes through time, but few realize it was once considered heresy to suggest the divine realm and material realm are reflections of one another. The tablet was not destroyed, it was hidden, translated, retranslated, until its meaning became so layered that only the initiated could sense its essence. Another text, lesser known yet deeply feared, is the Corpus Hermeticum, a series of teachings, once embraced in the ancient world, only to be buried by religious reform. These writings speak of the nous, the divine intellect within man. They suggest that the human mind, purified and awakened, can perceive the structure of the cosmos and merge with it. This was not acceptable to the rising systems of control, because if divinity lives within you, what power can rule over you? There are also whispers of the Sibylline books, a collection of prophetic writings guarded by ancient Rome. It is said they foretold not only the rise and fall of empires, but also cyclical truths about spiritual decline and rebirth. The empire kept them hidden, locked in stone vaults. When their messages no longer served the ruler's agenda, they were allowed to vanish. What all these texts share is not a story, but a vibration. They do not scream, they resonate, and those who encounter them often report the same sensation: a subtle pull, a strange familiarity, as if they are not reading, but remembering. These weren't just books, they were portals, and to open one was to risk never seeing reality the same way again. There's a reason why some pages vanish not with fire, but with silence. Among the most mysterious texts ever suppressed is the Voynich manuscript. Discovered in the early 20th century, this book is written in an unknown language, filled with illustrations of unknown plants, cosmic diagrams, and women in strange rituals. To this day, no one has decoded it. Some say it's nonsense. Others believe it's a ciphered manual of ancient knowledge, an alchemical record from a civilization that predates our own. What if its language was never meant for the rational mind but for the unconscious, a script written in the grammar of dreams? There are legends surrounding the Nag Hammadi library, a collection of Gnostic texts hidden in clay jars in the Egyptian desert. These writings challenge everything we've been told about divinity. They speak of a divine spark trapped within the human body, of a creator God that is not the ultimate source but a flawed architect, a demiurge. To believe this was to defy the empire, the priesthood, and the heavens all at once, which is why these teachings were buried, not lost but placed in slumber for a time when humanity might once again be ready to see. In the East, there's mention of the Book of the Nine Unknowns, allegedly created by an ancient secret society. In India, entrusted with powerful sciences that could alter consciousness, manipulate energy, or end war itself. The idea was not to hide truth forever, but to protect it from misuse. Each chapter was said to be guarded by a single keeper, and together, they held the blueprint of humanity's awakening, or annihilation. Another often overlooked text is the Picatrix, a medieval grimoire that blends astrology, magic, and philosophy. It details how celestial bodies influence the soul, how intentions can be shaped through precise rituals, and how the material and spiritual realms mirror one another. It was banned repeatedly across Europe, condemned not because it was foolish, but because it was precise, because it taught sovereignty over one's reality. What links all these works is not a genre, but a threat. They don't just inform, they initiate. They bypass doctrine and ignite a fire in the reader, one that institutions cannot control. For those in power, a citizen with knowledge is manageable, but a seeker with inner authority, that is a force that cannot be governed. And so, these books were discredited, mislabeled, buried, or condemned, not because they lied, but because they empowered. Still today they exist in the shadows, scattered in museums, private collections, or simply waiting to be found in silence, waiting for a mind not trained to believe, but to remember. You don't need to hold a forbidden book in your hands to awaken the knowledge it carries, because the most powerful manuscripts were never meant to be read in libraries. They were meant to be remembered in silence, felt between the breath, activated in moments when the mind is still and the soul listens. If these ancient texts held any single message, it was this: you are not merely a receiver of truth, but a generator of it. Start there. Begin by creating sacred space in your day, not filled with noise but with emptiness. Even 5 minutes in quiet solitude without distraction can act as a doorway, a ritual, a page turning in a book that lives within your own consciousness. Keep a journal, not as a record, but as a mirror. Let your thoughts, symbols, dreams, and intuitions flow freely onto the page. Patterns will emerge. Archetypes will repeat. You'll begin to see that what these forbidden texts revealed with ink and vellum, your soul whispers with symbols and feeling. Pay attention to what draws you. Certain words, images, ideas. They're not coincidences. They are echoes, clues, pages of a story you've already begun to live, long before you pressed play on this video. Read not only books, but signs, synchronicities, dreams, repetition. In the Hermetic tradition, the outer world reflects the inner. The universe is a text and your awareness is its language. And above all, cultivate discernment. In a world filled with noise, depth is a rare and sacred thing. Question what you're told. Question what you believe. But never forget to question what you've forgotten. Because the greatest truths are often not discovered. They're remembered. You don't need to find the Book of Enoch or decipher the Voynich manuscript. You need to recognize when your soul begins to respond to something ancient, something silent, something sacred. That's when you'll know you've started reading a book that no one can burn. Some books were written with ink, others with fire, but the ones that matter most were written with silence and hidden in the soul. What we've explored here are not simply old texts. They are reminders, fragments of a memory that belongs not to the past but to something timeless, something that speaks when the noise of the world is finally quiet. The truth is never lost. It is only veiled. And every time a seeker dares to ask, dares to look beyond, the veil grows thinner. Perhaps that's why you're here, not for information but for resonance, for that subtle feeling that something you always suspected is real. So now ask yourself, what else has been hidden? What else have you always known, but never dared to remember? And if this message found you, if something inside you stirred, know that you're not alone on this path. This channel exists for those who still seek, for those who listen beyond the surface, and for those who remember that the most sacred knowledge was never truly forbidden. It was waiting. Join us. Subscribe and continue walking this path of symbols, silence, and light, because the next revelation may already be whispering to you.